I am asking, is David Lammy right that climate change poses a bigger threat than terrorism? Let me know your thoughts. Go to gbnews.com/your say. You can tweet me at gbnews. Well, going head-to-head on this, we have got the defence and security expert Stuart Crawford. I think that we were hoping to get a Just Stop Oil spokesperson as well called Dr Bing Jones, but they might have had some difficulties with their connection. So, Stuart, as it stands, the floor is yours. Do you think that David Lammy is out of line here? I mean, does he want to go and look the victims of the Manchester Arena bombing in the eye and say that to them? They should have been more worried about climate change?
Good evening, Patrick. I think I should sort of preface everything I'm going to say with the observation that, according to my Westminster sources, David Lammy is good at reading from a script, but not quite so good at thinking for himself. But I'm frequently asked what I think the biggest threats to in terms of global security are, and the UK security in particular. And climate change doesn't even come into the top 10. I'm not a religious person, but a good place to start is the New Testament with Revelations and the four horsemen of the apocalypse, which, as I'm sure you will know, are conquest, war, famine, and death. And then off the top of my head, I came up with others, which included pestilence, plague, terrorism, both international and domestic, immigration, legal and otherwise, poverty and religion. And I haven't even started on others. Now, I'm prepared to accept that climate change, or as I prefer to call it, climate variation, has an impact on most, if not all, of those issues. But in terms of the biggest threat facing the world and the UK in terms of security, I think David Lammy is really mistaken, and badly so.
OK. I mean, I did see one incredibly prominent political journalist who happens to do a lot for The Sun tweet out that this David Lammy speech was the worst political speech he has ever had the misfortune of listening to, which really is saying something, I think, considering he must have had to listen to loads of them prattle on over the years. But, yeah, I suppose for David Lammy, what that is an admittance now, in full view of the public, that he is fully signed up to the idea that the world is going to end as a result of climate change imminently, and that if you do believe that, then that has to be the most important thing for you. And that's now the thought process of our foreign secretary, as China might be about to have a bang on Taiwan, as there's still going on in Russia and Ukraine. Obviously, we've got the Middle Eastern issue. I just wonder if he should stick to his actual job.
Well, I mean, I would tend to agree. I mean, climate change is a bandwagon which is easy to climb on if you're seeking political approval and approval of your peers. But no matter what people may say, and I've read as much background on it as I can as a non-expert, the science is not settled at all. A lot of it is based on computer modelling. And funnily enough, I was up in the Outer Hebrides, which is, I can tell you, a long, long way away from where I am now, over the last week. And I visited an Iron Age settlement on the island of Harris. And during part and parcel of the description from the team there of what had gone on there, they indicated that the archaeological evidence indicated that when people lived there 1,200 years ago, the weather was warmer and wetter. So I think really we've got to be conscious that this could just be a climate variation.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, we are now going to be welcomed by our friend Dr Bing Jones. Fantastic. I'm very glad that we've got you on now. You are, of course, a Just Stop Oil spokesperson. Now, if you've been listening, there's quite a lot for you to come back on at the moment. So David Lammy essentially was alluding to the idea that climate change is a more pervasive threat than things like terrorism or indeed maybe war, which I don't think is necessarily brilliant for a foreign secretary to be saying, but presumably you would agree with that.
Hi there, Patrick. Well, I'm sorry, I've only just joined, so I didn't hear anything that has just been said. So I'm here right fresh. Look, I'm so pleased that David Lammy has said all this. It is so, so wonderful that somebody in authority is finally getting over how enormous and urgent the climate crisis is. And of course, it's not the same as terrorism and it's not the same as war, but it's fundamental. It's absolutely underneath everything. and it's going to make everything worse. It's going to make cost of living crisis worse. It's going to make any kind of social problem worse. And just to reiterate what he said, I can just quote some of these things. He said it's fundamental, it's systematic, it's pervasive, and it's accelerating us towards us at pace. This is really the most serious thing that has ever happened to humanity. It's getting worse every single day. And it's only when people in massive, really high authority, like David Lammy, start taking it really seriously.
We've got, yeah. I mean,
okay,
but I mean, this is why we have things like an environment secretary or an energy minister or someone like that, isn't it? You know, the foreign secretary's job. I mean, he's got a lot on at the moment. Also, that kind of thing about him being pervasive and rapidly approaching at pace. I mean, I can think of a few terror attacks, Stuart, where you could argue that the problem there has been rapidly approaching at pace.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't, I mean, I would not want to be critical of Dr. Bing's sincerely held beliefs, because I think it's important that people do get involved in these sort of issues and have beliefs that we can debate. But as I said previously to him joining us, I don't think climate change, or climate variation, if you prefer, makes the top 10 of the risks facing the UK. And there are much more important things.
Stuart, what more do you want? We've got Storm Boris causing probably billions of pounds worth of damage, killing 20, 30 people, dozens dead. You've got Typhoon in Vietnam killing 500 people. And it's hardly even making the news. 250,000 homes
I don't think he's going to listen to me. Listen to me.
Yeah. All right. Well, so your point, Dr. Bing, is that for you, the climate emergency is literally the most important thing facing humanity, and therefore everything else naturally has to come second.
This is not random, right? This is, as David Lammy said, it's a failure. It's a failure of politics. It's a failure of regulation, and it's a failure of international cooperation. We have got to realise that it's getting worse and worse because fossil fuel companies are increasing the emissions that they produce every single day. And the only way to get on top of it is the job of the Foreign Secretary, because we need an international agreement.
That's fine, but then I do wonder, look, fine, but then I think, unfortunately for both of you possibly, because I dare say that Stuart, who's a security expert, doesn't want our Foreign Secretary going around trying to convince the Chinese to stop doing stuff with fossil fuels. Also, dare I say it, Dr. Bing, maybe unfortunately for you, is that, take this logic to its natural conclusion, it is David Lammy who's going to have to go round and convince Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin to stop doing things like burning coal, and I'm not sure he's the man for that job. But we wait and see, though, don't we? We will see. Chaps, thank you very much. I'm sorry, I know it's massively disjointed because you had connection issues, but we got through it in the end, so I do appreciate it. Now, right, coming up, GB News can exclusively reveal that a judge has ordered a Rotherham grooming gang survivor to retract her demand for her abusers to be deported.